I never thought my own son could sink this low, until I came home from the hospital, stood on my own front porch, and my key wouldn't turn in my own front door. Eleanor Brooks stood there in the late afternoon light, a small overnight bag hanging from her shoulder, staring at a lock that was not the lock she had installed 11 years ago. Same door. Same brass numbers, 214, screwed into the same faded cedar siding. But a different lock. A stranger's lock. On her house. She tried it again, slower this time, as if patience might change the shape of metal. It didn't turn. It didn't even pretend to try. Somewhere behind that door, she could hear the television running. Her television. In her living room. And for a moment, Eleanor Brooks, 68 years old, a widow of 6 years, a woman who had raised 2 children and buried one husband and paid off this mortgage with her own 2 hands, stood on her own porch like a stranger asking to be let in. Why would her own son do this to her? Who had changed the locks while she was lying in a hospital bed recovering from what her doctor called a routine procedure, nothing to worry about. Did she still legally own this house? Was her daughter-in-law behind this? Would she call the police on her own child? Eleanor didn't know the answers yet. But she was about to find out. And nothing about the woman who eventually walked back down those porch steps would resemble the woman who had walked up them. 3 days earlier, Eleanor had been lying in a recovery room at St. Vincent's, tubes taped to the back of her hand, half listening to her son's voice drift in through the doorway. Daniel had come to visit, the way a good son does, with a coffee he didn't offer her and a phone he never quite put down. "You scared us, Mom," he'd said, not quite looking at her. 68 and living alone in that big house. It's not safe. It's a hip replacement, Daniel. Not a stroke. Still. He'd glanced at his wife, Kayla, who stood by the window scrolling through something on her phone. "We've been talking. Maybe it's time to think about options." Eleanor remembered laughing, actually laughing, right there in the hospital bed. Options. Like what, Daniel? A retirement home? I raised you in that house. I'm not leaving it in a body bag or a moving box, whichever comes last. He hadn't argued. He just smiled the small, patient smile of a man who already knew something she didn't. Eleanor had married Robert Brooks in 1979, in a small church 2 towns over from the house they would eventually buy together, and for 31 years that house had absorbed every version of their life, the scraped knees, the science fair volcanoes, the Christmas mornings, the quiet Tuesday evenings after the kids moved out when it was just the 2 of them and the hum of the dishwasher. When Robert died 6 years ago, sudden and unannounced, in the parking lot of a hardware store with a bag of grass seed still in his hand, Eleanor had grieved in that house, healed in that house, and quietly promised herself she would leave it only when she was good and ready, on her own terms, and not one single day before. She hadn't expected, on her own terms, to become a fight before her 70th birthday. But lying in that recovery bed, watching her son check his phone more than he checked on her, some small, sharp instinct at the back of Eleanor's mind had already started paying closer attention than Daniel realized. She should have paid closer attention to that smile. But that wasn't even the worst part. Because while Eleanor was learning to walk again on a hospital physical therapy mat, gritting her teeth through pain that radiated from her hip to her knee, her son and his wife had been busy. Busy with a locksmith. Busy moving boxes labeled Kayla's office and baby room into the house Eleanor had lived in for 31 years. Busy deciding, without asking her, without so much as a phone call, that Eleanor Brooks's home now belonged to somebody else's plans. Standing on the porch now, keys useless in her hand, Eleanor finally knocked. 3 sharp Raps, the kind you use on a stranger's door, not your own. Kayla answered. 29 years old, blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing one of Eleanor's kitchen aprons like she'd found it in a thrift store instead of a drawer that had belonged to Eleanor's own mother. Oh. Eleanor. Hi. Wow, you're already out? It's my house, Kayla. Why wouldn't I be out? Right, of course, come in, come in. Kayla stepped aside, and Eleanor walked into her own living room like a guest at somebody else's party. There were new throw pillows on her sofa. A baby monitor sat charging on the side table, even though there was no baby yet, only a plan for one. Her late husband Robert's recliner had been pushed into the corner, half covered by a folded moving blanket, the way you cover furniture you intend to get rid of. Where's Daniel? Eleanor asked. Work. He'll be home around 6. Kayla smiled the way people smile when they're hoping the conversation ends before it starts. We should probably talk about the door situation. Yes, Eleanor said. We probably should. What Eleanor discovered next changed everything. Daniel came home at 6:14 that evening to find his mother sitting at the kitchen table she'd bought 40 years ago with Robert, her cane resting against the chair beside her, her face perfectly, unnervingly calm. Mom. Hey. You're here. He set his keys down on the counter, in the little dish that had always been Eleanor's dish, in the spot that had always been Eleanor's spot. I was going to call you. When? Eleanor asked. Before or after you finished moving in? Daniel exhaled slowly, the way he used to when he was 17 and caught sneaking in past curfew. Mom, it's not what it looks like. We just, after the surgery, we got worried. What if you fell? What if something happened and nobody was here? Kayla and I talked, and we thought, why not just consolidate? We move in, we help take care of you, you're not alone anymore. It's a good thing. It's for your safety. For my safety, Eleanor repeated. Is that why you changed the locks and didn't give me a key? Silence. Real silence, the kind that tells you more than words ever could. We were going to get you a copy, Daniel finally said. We just didn't get around to it yet. Eleanor looked at her son, really looked at him, and for the first time in his 38 years of life, she saw something in his face she didn't recognize. Not cruelty exactly. Something colder than cruelty. Convenience. He wasn't looking at his mother. He was looking at a problem he needed managed, a variable he needed contained, until the day arrived when the house would simply, naturally, become his. You think I'm dying, Eleanor said quietly. Mom, don't. You think I'm old and weak and close to the end, and you and Kayla have already decided how this is going to go. Haven't you? Daniel didn't answer. And that silence was the loudest thing Eleanor had ever heard in her own kitchen. She thought the betrayal was over that night. She was wrong. Over the following 2 weeks, Eleanor watched her home get quietly rearranged around her. Piece by piece, the way water reshapes a stone without ever announcing that it's doing it. Kayla repainted the guest bathroom gender-neutral yellow without asking. Daniel had the garage cleared out to store his construction equipment, boxes of Robert's old tools shoved unceremoniously into black contractor bags labeled donate. A contractor came by to just take some measurements for a nursery that didn't exist yet, in a house that wasn't his. Eleanor said nothing. She smiled at dinner. She asked Kayla how she was feeling. She let Daniel believe, for 2 full weeks, that his mother had accepted her fate. But every night, after the house had gone quiet, Eleanor sat at that same kitchen table with a small spiral notebook Robert used to keep for tracking his fishing trips, and she wrote things down. Dates. Conversations. The exact day the locks were changed. The exact day Kayla mentioned, "Once this is officially our place." She wasn't writing a diary. She was building a case. Then something happened that no one expected. On the fourth night, unable to sleep, Eleanor pulled on her robe and walked down to the kitchen for a glass of water, only to find the porch light still on and her old friend Margaret Holloway standing at the bottom of the driveway, arms crossed against the evening chill. "I saw the new pickup in your driveway last week," Margaret said without preamble, the way only a woman who has known you for 30 years is allowed to. "And I saw the moving truck the week before that." "Eleanor Brooks, are you going to tell me what's happening in that house, or am I going to have to hear it from the Wilsons across the street?" Eleanor almost laughed, the first real laugh in days, and invited her old friend in for tea. She told Margaret everything: the locks, for your safety, the paint in the guest bathroom, the crib box already ordered online for a baby that didn't exist yet. Margaret listened without interrupting, her jaw tightening more with every sentence, until finally she set down her cup and said the words Eleanor hadn't let herself say out loud yet. "They're waiting for you to die, Eleanor." Politely. Patiently. "But that's what this is." Eleanor didn't argue. She simply nodded, because somewhere in the last 2 weeks, she had already arrived at the same conclusion, and hearing someone else say it made it real, instead of paranoid. "So what are you going to do about it?" Margaret asked. "I'm going to do something they'll never see coming," Eleanor said. "Because they've stopped believing I'm capable of surprising anyone." It was a Tuesday morning, gray and quiet, when Eleanor picked up the phone and called a number she hadn't dialed in almost 15 years, her late husband's old attorney, a sharp, silver-haired man named Walter Chen who had handled Robert's estate after the heart attack that took him far too early. "Eleanor Brooks," Walter said warmly when she reached him. "It's been a long time. How can I help you?" "Walter," Eleanor said, her voice steady in a way that surprised even her, "I need you to pull the deed on my house. I need to know, in plain English, whose name is on that title. Just mine. Or someone else's too." There was a pause on the line. "Has something happened?" "Something's happening," Eleanor said. "I intend to make sure it stops happening to me, and starts happening because of me." 2 days later, Walter called her back with news that made Eleanor sit down slowly at the kitchen table, her hand pressed flat against the old wood. "The house is entirely yours, Eleanor. Sole ownership. Robert made sure of that when he passed. No joint tenancy, no other names on the title, nothing. Legally speaking, your son has no more claim to that property than a stranger walking in off the street." Eleanor closed her eyes and let that settle over her like warm water. That same week, while Daniel and Kayla were away at a childbirth class 2 towns over, Eleanor spent 3 quiet afternoons in the garage and basement, sorting through what was hers and what had crept in without her permission. Robert's old tackle box, his workbench, the Christmas ornaments packed in a box marked Brooks family in her own handwriting from decades ago, all of it she carefully wrapped and loaded into her own car, trip after trip, telling Kayla only that she was doing some spring cleaning. She left Daniel's construction equipment exactly where it sat. She left the boxes labeled Kayla's office untouched on the shelf. Not out of kindness. Out of strategy. Let them believe, for just a little longer, that nothing had changed. Then the lawyer revealed something shocking, and everything Eleanor thought she understood about her own family shifted one more time. "But Eleanor," Walter continued, his voice lowering slightly, "there's something else you should know. Your son filed a request last month with the county, an inquiry into establishing power of attorney over your affairs. It was never finalized. It never got past a preliminary form. But he filed it, Eleanor. While you were still in surgery recovery. Eleanor sat with that for a long moment, staring at the refrigerator covered in photographs. Daniel's graduation, his wedding to Kayla, a Christmas from years ago when he still looked at her like she mattered more than a house ever could. "Thank you, Walter," she finally said. "I think I know exactly what I need to do." That's when Eleanor made the decision that would change everyone's future forever. She did not scream. She did not confront Daniel across the dinner table, throwing accusations like plates. Eleanor Brooks had spent 68 years learning that the loudest person in the room rarely wins anything that matters. So instead, quietly, without a single word to her son or his wife, she began to build her exit. The following Thursday, while Daniel was at work and Kayla was out at a prenatal class for a baby that still didn't exist, Eleanor met with a real estate broker named Diane Marsh at a coffee shop 2 towns over, far from anyone who might recognize her car in a driveway. "I need this handled discreetly," Eleanor told her, sliding a folder of paperwork across the table. "No signs in the yard. No open houses. I want serious, private buyers only, people who can move quickly and quietly." Diane studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly, the way people nod when they've seen this particular kind of quiet determination before. "Family situation? Something like that." "I know exactly the kind of buyer you're looking for," Diane said. "Give me 2 weeks." It took Diane 9 days. A young couple, Staff Sergeant Marcus Ford and his wife, Renee, recently transferred to the base 40 minutes away, expecting their second child in the spring. They walked through Eleanor's house on a Saturday morning while Daniel and Kayla were at a Home Depot 45 minutes across town, picking out paint swatches for a nursery in a house that would never belong to them. Eleanor watched from the kitchen doorway as Renee ran a gentle hand along the same countertop where Eleanor had once taught Daniel to make pancakes, as Marcus stood in the backyard imagining, out loud, exactly where he'd build a swing set for his daughter. "It's perfect," Renee whispered to her husband, unaware that the woman standing quietly in the doorway had raised her own children in that exact kitchen, had buried her husband's ashes beneath the maple tree in that exact backyard, had built 31 years of memory into every wall of that exact house. "We'll take it," Marcus said. "Whatever it takes." Eleanor smiled for the first time in weeks. Not because she was getting rid of her home, but because she was finally choosing where it went next. The following weekend, Eleanor told Daniel she was visiting an old friend upstate and drove 3.5 hours alone to a small lakeside town she and Robert had once talked about retiring to, back before his heart gave out in the parking lot of a hardware store on an ordinary Thursday afternoon. She walked through 4 different condos with a local agent named Priya, each one smaller than the house she'd raised her children in, each one quieter, each one entirely, unmistakably hers. The third one had a small balcony that caught the sunset directly over the water. Eleanor stood on it alone for nearly 10 minutes while Priya waited politely inside, and when she finally came back in, her decision was already written across her face. "This one," Eleanor said. "I don't need to see the rest." "You're sure?" "Some buyers like to compare." "I spent 31 years in a house I never once got to choose for myself," Eleanor said. "My mother-in-law picked out the curtains. My husband picked the street. My son apparently thinks he's picked my future. I know what I want when I see it, Priya. I've just never been the one holding the pen before." She signed the offer that same afternoon, in a small coffee shop overlooking a marina, 3 states and 1 entire lifetime away from a son who still believed his mother was too fragile to make a decision without his help. But then something happened that almost changed everything. Just 3 days before the closing date, Eleanor was upstairs quietly sorting through the last of Robert's belongings in the attic when she heard the front door open below. Voices. Daniel's voice, tight and unfamiliar, and beneath it, the low rumble of another man she didn't recognize. She crept partway down the stairs and stopped, out of sight, listening. Just need you to sign off saying she's not competent to make major decisions right now. The unfamiliar voice was saying. Given her age, given the surgery, a judge will likely. I don't know, Daniel said, and for the first time, Eleanor heard something that sounded almost like hesitation in her son's voice. She seems fine. Sharper than fine, actually. She's been asking a lot of questions lately. That's exactly why you need to move now, before she gets some lawyer of her own involved. And this becomes complicated. Eleanor's stomach turned to ice. Somebody knocked on the door before Daniel could answer. It was Kayla, home early, her face flushed with excitement, completely unaware of the conversation she was interrupting. Guess what, she said breathlessly. I just got off the phone with my mom, and she thinks we should push for guardianship before the baby comes, just to simplify everything, get the house officially in our name before. She stopped short when she saw the stranger standing in the living room. An awkward silence stretched across the room like a held breath. Eleanor did not go downstairs. She did not confront them. She simply stood very still on the staircase, one hand pressed against the wall, and understood, with total clarity, exactly how close she had come to losing everything, her home, her independence, her voice in her own life, to people who called it love. She went back up to the attic. She finished sorting Robert's boxes. And she did not say a single word about what she'd heard. Not yet. 3 days later, on a bright, ordinary Tuesday morning, Eleanor Brooks stood in Walter Chen's office and signed the final documents transferring ownership of her home to staff. Sergeant Marcus Ford and his wife, Renee. Walter slid each page across the desk one at a time, tapping a gentle finger beside each signature line, and Eleanor signed her name in the same steady handwriting she'd used to sign Daniel's school permission slips decades earlier. Any regrets? Walter asked quietly, once the final page was signed. Eleanor considered the question honestly, the way she considered most things now. I have 31 years of memories in that house, Walter. Those don't transfer with the deed. Nobody can take those from me, no matter whose name ends up on the paperwork. She capped her pen. So, no regrets. Just a door closing so a new one can open. The closing took 11 minutes. It felt, to Eleanor, like the quiet click of a door finally being locked on the correct side. That same afternoon, moving trucks, not Kayla's decorating trucks, not Daniel's construction supplies, but real moving trucks, Eleanor's own, arranged weeks in advance, pulled into the driveway of 214 Maple Hollow Court. 2 men carried out the last of Eleanor's furniture, her kitchen table, Robert's recliner rescued from that contractor bag, 3 boxes of family photographs, and a small cedar box containing the folded American flag from her husband's funeral. Everything else, the throw pillows, the yellow paint, the baby monitor charging uselessly on a side table, the future Daniel and Kayla had built entirely without asking her, stayed exactly where it was. It was no longer Eleanor's to take, and more importantly, it was no longer Eleanor's to protect. Just when Daniel thought he had time, everything fell apart. He came home from work that Friday evening to find a moving truck he didn't recognize parked crooked across the driveway, and a young man in a military-issue haircut carrying a bookshelf up the front steps of a house Daniel had, in every quiet calculation he'd made over the past 2 months, already considered his own. Hey, excuse me, Daniel said, jogging up the driveway, his voice climbing with confusion. Who are you? What's going on? The young man set the bookshelf down carefully. Sorry, man, are you looking for someone? We just closed on this place Tuesday. Daniel felt the ground tilt beneath him. Closed on it. What do you mean, closed on it? This is my mother's house. It was, said a voice behind him. Daniel turned around to find Eleanor standing at the edge of the driveway, dressed simply. Her cane in one hand, her face calm in a way that unsettled him far more than anger would. Mom. What is this? What did you do? I sold it, Eleanor said simply. To Marcus and Renee. They're expecting their second child. In the spring. He's stationed at the base. Good people. They love this house, Daniel. They're going to take very good care of it. You can't just, this is my house too. I grew up here. I've put money into this house. Daniel's voice cracked, 38 years old and suddenly sounding, for the first time in a long while, like a scared little boy. Where am I supposed to? Where's Kayla supposed to? We had plans, Mom. We had a nursery planned. You had plans for a house that was never yours, Eleanor said, and though her voice didn't rise, every word landed with the weight of something long overdue. You changed the locks on my own front door while I was recovering from surgery. You filed paperwork trying to have me declared incompetent, Daniel. I heard you. I heard both of you, in my own living room. Planning my life without me in the room. Daniel opened his mouth, and nothing came out. There was no excuse left to reach for. No. It's for your safety, that could survive what Eleanor had just said out loud. I'm not doing this to punish you, Eleanor continued, softer now. I did it because somewhere along the way, you and Kayla stopped seeing me as your mother, and started seeing me as an obstacle between you and a house. And I refuse to spend whatever years I have left being managed instead of loved. Kayla arrived a few minutes later, stepping out of her car to find her husband standing frozen in a driveway that no longer belonged to either of them, watching strangers carry a crib box up the front steps of a nursery that would now belong to somebody else's child. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Daniel did something Eleanor had not expected. He sat down, right there on the curb, elbows on his knees, and put his face in his hands. Kayla stood a few feet away, one hand resting on her stomach even though there was no baby there yet, just a plan that had unraveled faster than she could follow. Eleanor, please. Where are we supposed to go? We gave notice on our apartment. We already told people. You told people about a house that was never yours to announce, Eleanor said, not unkindly, but without softening either. I understand this is a hard landing, Kayla. I do. But I spent 2 weeks watching my kitchen get repainted for a nursery nobody asked my permission to plan. I am sorry this is painful. I am not sorry I stopped it. Marcus appeared briefly on the front steps, glancing at the small crowd gathered in what was now his driveway, and quietly retreated back inside to give the family their privacy, a small kindness from a stranger that somehow stung Daniel more than anything his mother had said. I don't even know when it happened, he said quietly, more to himself than to his mother. When did I start thinking about you like that? Like a problem to be solved. You're my mom. Eleanor sat down beside him on the curb, slower, careful of her hip, but she sat. You got scared, she said. You looked at me getting older, and instead of asking me what I needed, you decided what was best for me without me. That's not love, Daniel. That's control wearing love's clothes. I'm sorry, he said, and this time it didn't sound like a word he was using to end an argument. It sounded like something breaking open. I'm so sorry, Mom. We should have talked to you. We should have asked. Yes, Eleanor said simply. You should have. She didn't tell him it was okay. She didn't tell him it didn't matter. Because it did matter, and pretending otherwise would only have taught him that it was safe to do it again. 2 weeks after the driveway confrontation, Daniel drove to the small storefront office of the man who had come to the house that day, an elder law consultant named Gary Pruitt. Recommended by Kayla's mother, who specialized in exactly the kind of paperwork Eleanor had overheard being discussed on the stairs. "I want to cancel the filing," Daniel said, standing in the doorway, not bothering to sit down. "All of it. The guardianship inquiry, whatever's left open with the county. I want it gone." Pruitt looked mildly surprised. "Mr. Brooks, these things take time to process regardless. There's no urgency to withdraw." "There is to me," Daniel said. "My mother is not incompetent. She just sold a house out from under me without me seeing it coming, which honestly says the opposite of what you had me try to file. I want it withdrawn today, in writing, and I want a copy sent to her attorney." He left that office lighter than he'd walked in, and called Kayla's mother that same evening to tell her, politely but firmly, that neither of them would be taking any more advice about how to handle his mother's affairs. What happened over the following month surprised almost everyone who knew the Brooks family. Daniel and Kayla found a small rental 2 towns over while they saved for a place of their own, a place they picked out together, budgeted for together, earned together. Daniel started calling his mother every Sunday, not to check whether she'd fallen or forgotten to take her medication, but simply to talk, the way a son should call a mother he respects, instead of one he's managing. Eleanor, for her part, settled into a quiet, sun-filled condo on the edge of a lake 3 states away, close enough to visit, far enough to finally breathe. Mornings there began with coffee on a small balcony overlooking still water, no locks that weren't hers, no footsteps in her hallway that didn't belong to her. Thanksgiving came 4 months after the closing, and Eleanor almost didn't extend the invitation at all. She sat with the phone in her hand for a long time before finally dialing Daniel's number. "I'm hosting a small dinner," she said, when he picked up. "Nothing fancy. Just turkey and the 2 of you, if you'd like to come." There was a pause on the line, long enough that Eleanor wondered if she'd made a mistake. "We'd like that," Daniel said finally, his voice thick. "We'd really like that, Mom." They arrived at the lakeside condo carrying a store-bought pie and a nervous, unfamiliar quiet, the kind that exists between people who love each other but no longer know exactly how to prove it. Kayla hugged Eleanor a beat too long at the door. Daniel stood behind her, hands jammed in his coat pockets, looking at the small, sunlit condo like a man walking into a stranger's home rather than his mother's. "It's smaller than the house," he said, and then immediately winced at his own words. "I mean, it's beautiful, Mom. Really. I just meant." "I know what you meant," Eleanor said, and there was no edge in it. "It's smaller because it only has to hold me. That was the whole point." Dinner was quiet at first, careful in the way that new ground always is, but somewhere between the mashed potatoes and Kayla's second glass of wine, Daniel set his fork down and looked at his mother across the small kitchen table, smaller than the one from Maple Hollow Court, but no less solid. "I keep replaying it," he admitted. "The lock. God, Mom, the lock. I keep thinking about what that must have felt like, standing on your own porch like that." "It felt," Eleanor said carefully, "like being erased. Politely. Which is somehow worse than being erased unkindly." Daniel nodded, his eyes wet, and didn't try to explain it away this time. He simply let the words land, the way a man finally learns to let consequences land instead of ducking them. It was nearly 6 months later, in the mild warmth of early spring, when Daniel drove out to see her again at the new place, Kayla beside him, both of them quieter, gentler, changed in ways that only real consequence can change a person. It's beautiful here, Mom, Kayla said, standing at the railing, looking out over the water. I'm sorry for all of it. I got caught up in, I don't even know. Excitement, I guess. About a future that wasn't mine to plan. I know, Eleanor said, and she meant it. She had learned, somewhere in the quiet months of building a new life entirely on her own terms, that forgiveness didn't require forgetting, and moving forward didn't require pretending the wound had never happened. Daniel stood beside her at the railing as the sun began sinking behind the tree line, painting the lake the color of warm honey. I used to think I was protecting you, he said quietly. Turns out I was just protecting my own plans, and calling it love because that felt better than admitting what it really was. Eleanor reached over and took her son's hand, the way she had when he was small enough to need her fingers wrapped around his on every busy street corner. You're allowed to have made a mistake, Daniel, she said. What matters now is what you do with knowing it. He nodded, and for the first time in almost a year, mother and son stood together in comfortable silence, watching the water instead of watching each other for the next argument. Sometimes the strongest families aren't built by inheritance, or property, or the quiet assumption that love entitles you to someone else's home. They're built by respect, the kind that asks before it assumes, that listens before it decides, that remembers a parent is a person long before they are ever a problem to be managed. Eleanor Brooks never got her old house back. She never wanted it back. What she got instead was something her son and daughter-in-law had almost taken from her without ever realizing its true value, her voice, her independence, and the simple, unshakable right to decide, for herself, exactly how the rest of her story would be written. Daniel visits every other month now, sometimes with Kayla, sometimes alone, and he always calls first, always, without fail, to ask if it's a good time. Small thing. It didn't used to occur to him. Now it's the first thing he does. Eleanor has noticed, and she has never once mentioned it out loud, because some lessons are worth more when they're allowed to simply become habit instead of being praised into performance. Back on Maple Hollow Court, Marcus and Renee Ford's daughter was born in early spring, and they brought her home to a nursery painted the soft gray-green Renee had always wanted, in a house that had somehow, without either family fully realizing it, ended up exactly where it belonged, with people who had asked, and waited, and earned it honestly. And every morning, from a small balcony overlooking a quiet lake 3 states away, Eleanor Brooks watched the sun rise on a life that finally, completely, belonged to her. Nobody else's name on the lease. Nobody else's plans painted over her walls. Just her coffee, her water, her silence, and the hard-won knowledge that independence, once you've had to fight to keep it, tastes sweeter than anything anyone could have simply handed you.